International, Dr. Charles Alina, CEO of Cyprus Natural Hydrocarbons Company and Senior Fellow at the Global Energy Center of the Atlantic Council. And great to see Rustin Edwards with us as well, Head of Sales and Marketing at VKG. And we're also hopefully being joined by Morgan Eldred, who's founder of Digital Energy AI as well. He's tuning in from Turkey, and we're going to get his take on. He was stuck in Tehran for a while, and we're looking forward to hearing about what the mood of the moment was there. Dr. Charles, let me start with you. Let's get a sort of overall picture from your opinion on the sort of balances in the market, given everything that's going on. You know, we've got obviously a war here in the region where we sit, and yet I want to get your opinion on oil prices. You know, they've been pretty steady since they sort of shot up by about 10% in the last couple of weeks, very steady. And forecasted, you know, Citi, we've got a headline there saying that they're going to stay around these levels, even if we actually see a disruption of Iranian oil exports. What's your opinion on the balances of the market and how the sentiment is interpreting the risk out there?
It seems that the market has decided that the Straits of Hormuz are not going to be shut. And as a result, any impact on Iranian it's contained, with OPEC increasing exports for 3 months now and having more reserves, as much oil to add to the market. It doesn't seem to be concerned too much about what happens with Iran. And every time President Trump says something, the price goes up a little bit. It seems to be climbing very, very slowly. It started with 75, is now 77, 78, but not really climbing. So overall, the market believes that the price is going to remain steady at that range, within that range, simply because they don't expect escalation. And it also seems that Israel has been refraining from attacking oil and gas production, especially oil production and export facilities, which could make the situation a bit more difficult. So all in all, it seems to be a war contained within Iran. I mean, there is no spillover anywhere else. And I was yesterday in Athens in an FT conference on energy. There was hardly any reference to the war. I mean, it seems that the war has been written off.
Well, not yet written off completely. Thank you for that, Dr. Charles. I mean, we do have headlines overnight coming out of Trump land that, you know, he's got this new 2-week window that he's decided that he's going to make up his mind what to do. So perhaps that's calming things, you know, that's giving an indication that there's an opening again to go back to the negotiating table with Iran. But again, you know, a lot of uncertainty to be taken from Trump's comments, obviously, and hard to sometimes interpret. Tony, I saw you there sort of nodding when Dr. Charles was talking. Same question to you, really, about sort of balance in the market. We have a headline today also, it's talking about how Iran is shifting its exports, its storage, its sort of on the water storage closer to Asia so that it is out of a sight of potential targeting. But as Dr. Charles said, nothing yet being targeted from the oil energy front. Your opinion again on sort of the balances in the market and also where prices might go. And again, do you expect that we'll stay at this rate if all else remaining equal?
Okay, well, I'm sort of more an infrastructure man than a price man, but I mean, I've just come back from Dubai. I live in the Philippines. Just come back, but I also actually have a huge contract in Israel, so with a government entity. So in a sense, I've been talking all week to various parties about this subject. I think the first interesting thing is that what we see is, as Charles said earlier on, that they're targeting Israelis are targeting the nuclear and military installations. They're not going for oil. There's one small hit on a terminal, but nothing to the scale of what they've been doing on the nuclear situation, which is clearly the target. the problem is from the other side of the fence. I think there is a disconnection in terms of targeting. They don't know what targeting is because I think they're going into everywhere and hitting a lot of local. Even with the Iron Dome, they're getting through. And my friend, my good contact over there, his neighbor 4 doors down, his house was destroyed. The guy also, his wife's office was destroyed. So
You're
there's
talking about Israel now.
about Israel,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
I can only
being
comment on that because
yes,
I know that
yeah,
Morgan's he can comment on Iran. So there is the Iron Dome isn't 100% successful for a
no,
start. I think certainly, there is this situation where targeting is very, very, very serious from one side, but very unusually, well, perhaps completely out of control from the other. So on oil prices, I mean, my comment on there is we did have, the original uplift, as Charles said. It's steady. It's going to stay there, and unless the US get involved, and I think it will probably stay where it is and maybe drop right back down again. Because the only impact really here is actually probably the Chinese demand, and I'm sure that
yes,
Justin will comment on this because obviously we had a small fire off Fujairah in the anchorage this week, and it was both of the products were actually emanating from Iran. They were both Chinese vessels, so or Chinese cargoes rather. So that's the real hit is how the Chinese are going to get their fuel in the future. On the comment you made about VLCCs, to my reckoning, there's probably only 2 VLCCs that have moved because it wasn't very much volume. $8 million is actually, if I move slightly to the, I don't know which way I have to go, that way, on the
yeah,
top of my mountain, which is my terminal in the Caribbean, 2 of those tanks will be about the volume that moved. So it's not a huge amount.
it's
It's
not a
not like
huge amount.
everyone's evacuated, right? And there is, a huge position off Malaysia and in Singapore, where my office is, really where all of that's parked. So it's pretty normal it will go there anyway. So I don't think that's anything too significant yet. But we have to analyze that a little bit further. So I hope that answers some of those questions.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Rustin, welcome again. I mean, let's just sticking to the same. I mean, let's talk about Chinese demand because another statistic that's come out this week in our conversations is, obviously storage in China is very full at the moment. So there's no real panic there about, what's going to happen, what's happening to prices so far. They don't have to be taking in a lot of oil at the moment, despite, with this $10 rise we've seen in the last 2 weeks, and that they have 3 months of equivalent of storage. So no panic there. Would you agree with that, or do you think the Chinese should be buying at this price in case it goes up? Again, from a China perspective, how do you think they're viewing the current price dynamics?
Well, I mean, China is always a price sensitive buyer, and they've proven that in the past. So, would they be buying more oil at this level? Then they must have a really good indication that something dramatic is going to happen with the logistics coming out of the Persian Gulf. That being said, right now it doesn't look like there's much of an impact to any traffic. People are being very risk adverse. Insurance rates have doubled for the most part going into the Persian Gulf, as well as any ships pulling up into the ports of Israel. Because they have been under barrage as well as some of the other infrastructure area. I mean, the Haifa refinery's been effectively shut down. Ashdod has also been shut down. And so it's very hard to get ships in and out of those regions just because of the insurance. Nobody wants to take the risk. China's demand, it has been waning on petroleum, and they are shutting down refineries. I think the Dalian refinery shuts down or has shut down. Or will shut down, and I forget the exact timing, but it's supposed to be at the end of this month. So, how much oil China is sitting on versus what their actual demand needs are, they probably have more oil than they need, and they probably don't want to spend more money at these price levels to buy oil just to have it sit offshore. They're very smart with their money in that
Yeah, yeah,
sense.
absolutely. And they have options at the moment. Let's go to Morgan Eldred, who I think, Medlin, hopefully is with us. I don't see him on video, but can you hear me, Morgan?
I can,
Great. Oh,
yes.
there you are, and I can see you too. So, Morgan, you're in Turkey at the moment, as I understand it, but you happen to have taken a weekend to Tehran 10 days ago and got stuck there. So give us a take on what happened exactly. I mean, I'm kind of interested to know, when this conflict started, you were in Tehran literally that weekend. I believe you made your way up to the Caspian to get out of the messy part, if you like. Give us a sense of what the mood was on the street there in terms of people leaving the capital.
So I think it was Friday the 13th, not a great day, obviously,
Okay.
historically, that the attack happened. And then the response was a kind of one of shock. Then the second part was there was firing from the capital, right from downtown, that had everyone scared. There was a lot of movement, a flood of movement north, which not just towards the Caspian, but a lot of flooding north. Then obviously there were some cyber attacks, so two of the banks kind of went down. And while it's kind of a cashless society because you can't carry millions of their money around, right? So that had a major impact. At the same time, internet communications got hit. So it was almost like a complete blackout. Lots of scattered posters were going up every day about saying, "Hey, everything's fine," da 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 da. But it was really one of disinformation and shock. Now they also use CNG, so compressed natural gas, for the cars that are there, and which means you don't get as long a distance when you drive. So you need to constantly there, and they were flooded. The gas petrol stations were flooded. But I think the major thing was it's just kind of a position of unease, not knowing what's going on. You can kind of see the risks in society start to move apart. So people moving into enclaves, kind of building up their own kind of personal security in some of these places. So it was not necessarily great.
No, and sounds like it was a complete surprise. I mean, again, when you have a build-up sometimes of these things, okay, you never expect the capital to be targeted, but it seems that it really did take everyone by surprise, not just in Iran, but elsewhere. I mean, in terms of the actual exact timing of it. Thanks, Morgan. I'll come back to you. Charles, let's talk a bit about, I mean, we're talking about petrol stations, but I want to talk about gas, natural gas, because again, we had a couple of people on the show this week who were saying that oil prices are steady. That's not the panic. It's actually gas is going to take, not because of the Iran-Israel conflict specifically only, but we're heading into summer and the timing of that for high gas demand, obviously, with temperatures both here in the Gulf where I sit and in Asia. Again, that demand is going to rise, and we're going to have possibly a spike in gas prices and disruption also even within the Middle East, Israel to Jordan gas, etc. The sort of the flows that happen in the conflict zone. So give us your take on that, sitting in Cyprus as well, also a budding gas producer. Where do you think that market is heading, and is there a lot of talk around that?
Well, let's start with the last one. Israel shut down the Leviathan gas field, and as a result, its exports of gas have gone down dramatically. Yesterday, it resumed some exports to Jordan, but the exports to Egypt are almost down to zero. As a result, Egypt is in serious trouble. I mean, the summer is coming. They're dreading blackouts, and Egypt is scrambling now to bring FSRUs faster than before. Committed to LNG, but is also buying heavy fuel oil to carry on with the electricity production. But it's not easy, and I can, if this whole thing lasts longer, I can see Egypt going into blackouts. The Israeli energy minister said that he doesn't know when they will be able to resume exports. It's down to the military to advise them. So it's dire. In terms of the gas price, I mean, in Europe, the price at the TTF hub has gone from about less than 35 euros per megawatt hour to over 41 now. So it has gone up by 17%, more or less the same increase as oil. But given the impact of gas on the electricity prices in Europe, it's having a serious impact. So I agree that as the conflict progresses, and with Qatar deciding to keep its ships out of the Straits of Hormuz,
yes,
exports from Qatar may come down, and if they do, the gas prices will spike even further.
And Ken, I mean, so with Qatar doing what it's doing, as you said, so in terms of the extra capacity LNG rescue ships that could come, I mean, of course, you've got US LNG that could make its way to Europe and onwards, but how quickly can extra LNG supply make its way in this period of time, or is that not possible? It's too late already in terms of this quarter that we're in.
Well, it's too late already because it's not like oil where there is spare capacity and there is oil sitting in places and there are reserves and oil in storage and it can be used. LNG, it's not easy to store, so it's not easy to ramp up LNG production to respond to this situation. So I do see LNG prices going up if Qatar exports are impacted. At the moment, they seem to be.
Thanks, Charles. Tony, back to you. Let's talk. I mean, how is the storage market being impacted by all of this in terms of demand for storage, the season that we're in, with tanks, full or not full, particularly, for oil, obviously, we're switching now back to oil. What is the mood around that? Has that changed because of the conflict that we're seeing? Is there any panic around that?
Well, not yet. I mean, it's still very early days. I mean, we have facilities in the US and we have facilities in Fujairah, and obviously I live in Asia, so I'm very close to all those markets. In Fujairah, there's really little impact because I think at this stage, because there's no Iranian movement going direct to Fujairah. It might go bypass somewhere else and come in, but it's not going. And that's not the customers we're dealing with, right? And we from our customers, we're not seeing any concern at the moment in Fujairah for that, for instance, which is the main hub, of course, in the UAE. In the US, there's very little impact at all. In Singapore, you mentioned it earlier, is the potential movement of product and floaters to come out towards the Straits. As I say, the volume that I think it was Bloomberg or Reuters mentioned earlier on. I mean, I think that's only a very small part of what's floating around, right? So I'm not sure. There must be a bigger picture. There's also a lot of AIS switching off going on. So
Yes.
obviously, if you like the vessels both out of Israel and coming out of Iran, and both are off AIS as soon as they hit port. So you can't really get it until right this week we had an incident in the anchorage off Fujairah and Khor Fakkan. That's the first time you sort of see, oh, that came from Iran, so it sort of signals what's going on. So the impact on Singapore, if you like, because Singapore is the hub for delivery to Asia, not necessarily for crude, but certainly for products and for fuel oil. All the tank farms there are pretty much full. Even some of them that are owned by traders are full. So it's not really going to impact them because they've got long-term contracts. So the storage companies are quite happy. Storage stocks and levels is a different matter to contracted storage. That's always a very different thing. In China, you mentioned earlier on also that strategic stock was pretty full. I think, yeah, it was, or it is rather, but there's a lot of storage. There's a lot of strategic storage. There's actually more storage in China than there is in the US. So put it that way. It's
And they're building more, aren't they? They're actually
they don't stop
continuing to build.
So, whereas, in India, for instance, they're sort of pretty limited with the strategic storage that they can bring in. China, they're not. So keep flowing. So I would imagine though that now China are taking a lot more from Russia, although the pipeline, the Sino-Russo pipeline, is pretty full and pretty congested, I would imagine at the moment. But they can also take things a long way around by sea. This time of year is okay. So I see more flow probably going to China through the Russian link if they need it, and they certainly will have a problem if they're loading out a cargo and trying to deliver to Shangwang or Shanghai or Qinzhou or any of those places. So there are issues, but actually at the moment the storage system is pretty steady.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you mentioned China and Russia. It'd be interesting to see what they're talking about behind the scenes as well with regards to the Iran. There were some comments. Again, we have a headline today as well about their approach to the G7 and the comments made out of there as well. It'd be interesting to see now. We did have Putin as well coming out, saying that regime change in Iran would not be acceptable. So it's kind of interesting. They're beginning to raise their voice around the conflict, and we'll see where that goes. Rostin, I'll go to you next, but there's our survey question for today. Have we already seen the high for Brent? when back in January oil hit $80 approximately for the year, I guess, or for the second half, because a lot of people are saying that now, we've got some tightness in the market. Obviously, we've got the summer demand. Despite all the OPEC supply that we have, there is demand out there, but it's really the third and fourth quarters where people are saying it might get more bearish. So, could we hit the high again, or have we seen that for the year? Rustin, your company deals with shale discovery and exploration. Let's just talk a bit about that in terms of give us your point of view of whether current prices as they are make a difference to operators who are actually trying to get shale out of the ground. And give us a bit of your perspective also. I know you're in Europe, but in terms of do you think US production is being impacted by these prices? Has it had a breath of relief now that we're in the 70s again? Does it make a difference in terms of that non-OPEC production coming into the market?
Well, I think if you're a independent producer of oil in the United States, $70 WTI gives you a nice hedging level. So you probably see more hedging being done down the curve if they want to do that, because everything else looks very bearish going forward, barring any major interruption of supplies in the Middle East. So therefore, you have an opportunity here to lock in some good OPEX and keep pumping and keep drilling. Our business is a bit different than what you have in the United States because we don't frack. We are a miner of shale stone, and then we process that stone through pyrolysis to extract the oil. We're fracking; they're actually doing a extraction of oil that's trapped within rock strata inside the U.S. The one downside of all this, however, is the operating cost is going to go up substantially because the price of diesel has rallied so much on the back of this strike. When you look at the price of diesel, gas oil has gone up about $140 a ton just in the last week. Comparing that to the price of crude oil, it's been a massive rally on gas oil. And part of this stems into the fact that there's a lot of gas oil exports out of the Middle East, especially from the refineries of ADNOC, KPC, and Saudi Aramco. All those are in risk, so therefore those prices have gone up. On top of that, with a higher cost of freight, and so that's where cost structure is going to have a problem with a lot of the shale producers, because that's going to go into the cost of running the trucks, running their generators, getting supplies delivered. All that price value is going to go up eventually, and it's going to be impacted rather quickly, because not only has ICE gas oil gone up that much, but if you look at US NYMEX heating oil, it's gone up almost as much. So that is where the big price hit is happening at the moment. And that's what's probably going to kind of put a drag on any individual production coming online, just because that extra cost is going to come into play.
Okay, that's interesting, because of course gas oil needed that support, didn't it? Because it's kind of been in the doldrums a little bit this year. I mean, if you look at the demand from industry, if you like, whether it's in Europe or Asia.
Europe has been pretty well hit, but there's been a lot of other support in the gas oil market that's kept it rather buoyant, despite the fact the EU industries have been lackluster. I mean, you still have the ecozone. You have a bit of increased maritime demand because of the Mediterranean ecozone, which has switched a lot of ships from fuel oil into gas oil to cover their needs as they transit the Med. China's been okay. India's been fairly strong. So there has been a lot of underlying support in the diesel market. And this has just added extra input to that just because of the shutdown of the natural gas fields. You have Jordan, you have Egypt, all looking for alternative fuels, which is hitting the gas oil as well as the fuel oil supply.
Thanks, Rustin. Morgan, let me just go back to you just as a sort of follow-up question. If you're still with us, is Morgan still with us? I don't know if I see him on my screen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you are. Okay, great. Oh, there you go. I see you. Yeah, just to sort of continue on the sort of what I know that you've left Iran now, but before you got to Turkey, and I'm glad you're out and safe. Was there again? I mean, the other talk around the current war is this. Will there be regime change in Iran? I mean, let's put oil aside and impact aside there. That's obviously been a big talking point. Is that what Israel wants? Is that what the US wants? We now have, and a lot of people are saying that would be a regime change, maybe would be okay, but downfall of the regime completely would be a disaster globally. Was there a lot of talk amongst Iranians? I believe you were visiting with an Iranian friend there when you were there. Did that come up in the first weekend, if you like, or the first few days, or were people just more focused on their safety?
No, I think that was a major part of it. Um, and you could see kind of the different movement in it. What was very surprising was you saw, especially towards the Caspian, a lot of parties, right? A lot of people celebrating, partying, because they thought something was going to come. I'm not sure now when it hits home when they realize, oh, we can't connect with family for 2 days, 3 days. I'm not so sure they'll want it the same way, but there was definitely a lot of almost hope in certain people there, that this could come, it could drive the thing. We do need to understand people will not go onto the street when there's bombing. They'll be very afraid of that. The current regime is very strong. They do control the messaging in the country, so I don't think it's going to be as easy as possible. But definitely, there was a lot of people. I mean, literally celebrating in certain parts of the country for this to happen, which was a
Yeah,
little
I mean,
bit.
obviously, we know there's a movement within Iran for, obviously, which is not happy with the regime. Was there any distinction being made between the IGRC and the government, if you like, and the leader, the supreme leader? Were people distinguishing between those two? IGRC has obviously been hit. They've taken out a few of them, and they are essentially control the machinations of the economy, etc. Was there a distinction being made between the two by people in terms of
No, I
their?
believe they see it as one, right? They see it as one. Um, they Yeah, it's all one regime. It's not necessarily disseminated. Obviously, I mean, there was a lot of reports of in the morning, sons of very famous people coming out in shorts, coming with disheveled heads, and kind of showing the hypocrisy of it. So there was an awful lot on that. Social media was very, until it was shut down, was very anti-regime and just kind of highlighting the double standards that had been shown.
Okay, thanks, Morgan. Dr. Charles, you're based obviously in Cyprus in Europe. I wanted just to get your take on, from a government point of view, the mood in Europe towards the conflict. We've got the UK, I think, and Germany and France meeting today, going to Geneva to meet with Iranian officials. Europe seems to be powerless in this, as they are on so many other conflicts. Like they've become this sort of sick man of the world and not being able to influence things one way or another. Do you think Europe can have any impact on influencing what the US does, what Israel does, and how strong do you think their stance might be, and what does it have to lose? Given also the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict is still going on, and Putin is obviously carrying on with whatever he wants, while everyone else is distracted.
Well, the simple answer is no. Unfortunately, Europe doesn't have a unified foreign policy approach. It's divided on most issues, and certainly when it comes to Israel, it's highly divided. As a result, in this conflict, they are trying to demonstrate some involvement. You mentioned the meeting today, but it's a low-level meeting, and it's not really going to have an impact. Ever since the split with the United States, Europe is trying to find a way, and it cannot. I mean, it tried to find a way on Ukraine, and then it backed off, and now it's again looking to the United States to lead. I think Europe has a long way to go before it sort of reorganizes itself and finds a way forward. The fact that there is a weak leadership everywhere, and in Germany, we only just have had a new chancellor without a clear way forward yet, leaves Europe a bit rudderless. But also is what I said, within Europe, the majority of countries do not agree. There is no unified approach on most international issues, and the European Commission ends up being sort of a bureaucratic organization rather than a political organization. So the politics of Europe is dictated by the capitals, and the capitals go their own way.
Yeah, and they each have their economic challenges, don't they? And then, of course, these new commitments also on the military front from a budget point of view. So Europe has a lot to deal with. But again, Europe, the Commission is being rendered powerless, and even the international organizations that we see, the UN, etc., seem to also be incapable of moving against the three or four powerful people that seem to be dictating where the world's going. Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time there, but thank you so much to Charles and to Tony and Rustin, and of course to Morgan. Safe trip back. We could have asked you about the Turkish mood as well, Morgan, but you haven't been there long enough. Of course, Turkey playing possibly a very big role in what's going on, at least behind the scenes. So we'll wait and see to see how things develop. There we go. The survey results, 62% no. We have not seen the high for Brent, which is kind of interesting. I would have voted yes, but let's see where things go. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a good weekend ahead. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.